Once upon a time, in a small village nestled between green hills and flowing rivers, there lived a boy named Rohan. He was known for one thing, his laziness. While the other children in the village would wake up early, work hard, and chase their dreams, Rohan would spend his days lounging in the sun, daydreaming about a future he never seemed to pursue. He was content with his carefree life, not worrying about the future or the consequences of his actions. His parents, though loving, were concerned. His father, Mr. Deshmach, was a farmer who worked from dawn till dusk. His mother, Mrs. Deshmach, ran the household, cooking and cleaning, making sure everything was in order. They had always encouraged Rohan to follow their example and work hard, but he would always brush it off with a smile and a promise to try tomorrow. Years passed, and Rohan's laziness became more than just a habit. It became his identity. He didn't care about school, didn't care about helping around the house, and definitely didn't care about his future. He spent his days dreaming about being famous or successful, but never took any steps towards it. "I'll get there eventually," he often told himself, convincing himself that luck would favor him someday. One day, the village received word of a grand competition. The Maharaja of the region was hosting a contest for young people, a competition that would test one's strength, intelligence, and perseverance. The winner would receive a large sum of money, a piece of land, and the title of the most promising youngster of the region. It was the kind of opportunity Rohan had always dreamed of: fame, fortune, and respect. At first, Rohan was excited. This was it, the chance to prove to everyone that he could be something more than just the lazy boy everyone knew him as. But when he mentioned the contest to his father, Mr. Deshmach gave him a stern look. "Rohan," his father said, "success doesn't come from dreams or competitions alone. It comes from hard work. Are you ready to put in the effort, or will you keep waiting for something to fall into your lap?" Rohan dismissed his father's words, as usual. But deep down, a seed of doubt was planted. Could he really do it? Could he, the lazy boy who never cared about anything, actually win the contest? The days leading up to the competition were a blur of preparation for everyone except Rohan. The other young villagers practiced their skills, trained their bodies, and honed their minds. They worked hard, day and night, practicing their physical abilities and mental sharpness. But Rohan, he sat under the same tree every day, lost in his daydreams. The night before the contest, Rohan couldn't sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of the prize, the recognition, the opportunity to escape his mundane life. But when he closed his eyes, he saw the faces of the villagers who worked tirelessly, giving their all to prepare. Rohan suddenly realized something. He hadn't done anything. He hadn't trained, hadn't prepared. He was still the same lazy boy he had always been. For the first time in his life, Rohan felt a sense of panic. The contest was tomorrow. He had no chance of winning, no chance of proving himself. And yet, a small voice inside him whispered, "Maybe it's not too late. Maybe you can prove to yourself that you're more than this." At dawn, Rohan woke up with a sense of urgency. He rushed to the river to bathe, then ran to the village square to find the others. The competition was starting in a few hours, and Rohan knew he had to do something. He approached the village elder, who was overseeing the contest. "Please, elder," Rohan said, panting, "I want to participate. I may not have prepared, but I'm ready to give my best." The elder, a wise old man named Baba, looked at Rohan for a long moment. "You are late," he said, "but the contest is not just about winning. It is about proving to yourself that you can rise above your limitations." If you are truly ready, then you may join. But be warned, this will be the hardest thing you have ever done." Rohan nodded, determined to prove something to himself, even if it meant failing in front of everyone. The contest was divided into 3 parts: a physical challenge, a mental challenge, and a test of resilience. Rohan was exhausted just watching the others, who had trained so diligently, but he couldn't back out now. The first challenge was a race through the forest. The participants had to run to a distant point and return in the shortest time possible. Rohan struggled from the very beginning. His body was out of shape, his breath short, and his legs heavy. He stumbled and fell twice, but each time he got up, his mind screamed at him to quit, to give up, but he kept pushing forward. When he finally crossed the finish line, he was last. The others had finished long ago. Rohan was drenched in sweat, his body aching, but there was something different in his heart. For the first time, he felt a sense of accomplishment. He had finished. He hadn't quit. The second challenge was a puzzle, a series of complex riddles that required sharp thinking. Rohan wasn't the smartest kid in the village, but he tried. He stared at the riddles, his mind racing. He could feel his old habits of laziness creeping in, telling him to give up. But he shook his head. He didn't want to be the lazy boy anymore. With intense focus, Rohan solved the first riddle, then the second, and the third. Slowly, he began to understand the pattern. In the end, he finished the puzzle in time, though not as quickly as the others. But once again, he had proven something to himself. He could think, he could solve problems, and he didn't have to rely on others to do everything for him. The final challenge was the hardest, a test of resilience. The participants had to endure harsh conditions, surviving a night in the wilderness with only basic supplies. They were told they could leave at any time, but if they did, they would forfeit their chance at the prize. Rohan's body was sore, his stomach growling with hunger, but he refused to give up. He had no idea what he was doing, no experience in survival, but he built a small shelter and started a fire. The other participants, seasoned in such conditions, were already settled comfortably, but Rohan was determined to push through, to prove that he could survive on his own. As the night wore on, Rohan sat in front of his small fire, shivering but resolute. The cold seemed to bite deeper with each passing hour, but Rohan didn't give in. When morning finally came, he was still there, exhausted, cold, hungry, but victorious. He had made it through the hardest part. When the competition ended, the elder announced the results. The winners were the ones who had excelled in all the challenges, but Rohan was not one of them. His performance had been average at best, but the elder called him forward nonetheless. "Rohan," Baba said, his voice kind, "you may not have won the prize, but you have proven something far more important. You have proven to yourself that you are capable. You have proven that you can rise above your own limitations. And that is the greatest victory of all." The villagers, who had watched him struggle through each challenge, began to clap. For the first time in his life, Rohan felt pride, not for a prize, but for his own effort. Rohan's life didn't change overnight, but that competition marked the turning point in his journey. He started waking up early to help his father on the farm, taking his studies seriously, and practicing skills he had always neglected. He was in tea perfect. There were still days when he felt the pull of his old habits, but he never stopped trying. Years later, Rohan became one of the most respected young men in the village. Not because of the prize he didn't win, but because of the man he had become. He had proven that overcoming laziness wasn't about being perfect. It was about making the decision to try, to push through the discomfort, and to keep going, even when it seemed easier to quit. And that, in the end, was his greatest victory. The story of Rohan teaches us that laziness is not an inherent part of who we are. It is a habit, a comfort zone we create for ourselves when we avoid hard work or challenges. But the true strength lies in our ability to push past that, to embrace discomfort, and to prove to ourselves that we are capable of more than we think. It is not about winning every challenge, but about showing up, doing the work, and never giving up.